Make so much noise for Fancy Feast.
Oh, hi. I'm a burlesque performer, which means I've been taking off my clothes for money for 7 years. Not a lot of money, but 7 long years. And one day I got a phone call from a producer who was creating a private immersive party event and wanted to hire me as an atmosphere performer. When you're an atmosphere performer, that's kind of like if you've ever been to the Ren Fair, there's like assorted troubadours who just kind of are like, oh, I'm a lady. Like that would be me, except for rich people. And she said, oh, so the party is going to be loosely themed around the 7 deadly sins. And she kind of paused for a moment. She's like, can you portray the sin of gluttony? No offense. It's not personal. But it totally is. So for those of you who are out there in Radioland who can't see me, I am fat. And the idea of being gluttony is something that I have tried to escape my entire life. The idea that if I'm not on the mic, I'm like backstage shoving, food and roll-ups in my face and I don't even know what. Like that there's this fear of assuming the stereotype, of confirming that belief for people. And it's gotten to the point where, although I have done so many years of self-work and self-love and self-care, it is just easier not to eat in public because I often get comments from people. So if I'm eating something that they perceive as healthy, like I had mango with chili and lime from one of those street carts, and some lady walked past me and was like, that's a healthy choice, good job. Bitch. It's fucking mango. It's delicious. And but if I'm eating a snack, like if I'm having ice cream, someone will walk past and go, oh, that goes right to the herbs. My sister's like you, and she did this program. I hear that shit all the time. But then I remember the voice of my mentor, Rosewood, who is an amazing shock artist, and she said, not everybody gets to be a princess. Some people are going to be monsters. And it is a very generous act to be a monster for somebody. So the party itself was kind of like the planet from Avatar. It was a little Pandora-ish. There were bioluminescent stuff and fake plants hanging from the ceiling. It was very lush. I said yes, by the way, in case you're wondering. Sorry, I said yes. Fuck yeah. I was like, how much does it pay? Got it, I'll do it. Honey needs money. The party was super dense and lush, and there was drum and bass music. And for the first half of the night, I had selected an outfit that I thought was kind of the Dionysian idea of excess. So I had a long gold fringe skirt, and I slathered my body in glitter lotion, and I put pasties on my nipples, and in my hair I wore plastic fruit with rhinestones on it. And I was placed on top of the bar, and my job was to just lay on the bar and greet people as they came in, and I had an enormous silver tray with grapes on it. So my whole job, just to feed people grapes as they came in. The clientele start trickling in, and everybody is extremely expensive. And the women look glamorous, and they are wearing tasteful things with maybe there's this one crate, they're like, oh, I have earrings, crazy, And the men are all in these very nice suits, and everybody looks so rich and so fucking miserable to be there. And I am their welcome wagon on top of the bar, so I muster the courage to say, while you wait for your craft cocktail, would you care for a fruit snack? And surprisingly, people warm to me. They're starting to eat, to interact. I have one dude come up to me and he's like, oh yeah, can I get you for my Snapchat? It was very welcoming of him. And there's a couple of guys who are just kind of hanging out by the bar because they probably feel as awkward as I do. And one of them hands me his vape pen. And as I'm taking long puffs from it, he asks, "So what's it like to be hot for a living?" And I look at him in the eye and blow smoke or vapor into his face. And I say, "It's fucking boring." Why don't you buy me a drink? I threw the drink away. I don't care. I just wanted him to spend a little money. And so the party, I don't know if you've ever been to rich people parties, but I've done a couple of them at this point, and they all kind of get to this like dystopian kind of messy place at a certain point. Like no matter if they start off at like a luncheon, they always kind of end up in this like Fall of Rome destruction place. People are going into the bathroom 3 or 4 at a time, and they're not closing the doors. I look at a guy and I'm like, he is just smelling his phone. I don't know what the fuck that is. Just smelling it. Until I was like, cocaine. Yes, cocaine. That's what he's doing. And so I feel very fortunate to be above it all, on top of the bar, where I can just sort of watch and observe. And that's when a production assistant taps me and is like, "Okay, we're gonna take a quick break. We're gonna be changing into the second half of the evening." So I get whisked away to the backstage. The second half of the night, they were like, just base your costume loosely on Hieronymus Bosch's painting, The Garden of Earthly Delights. A style guide. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's a completely whacked out painting from like the year 1500, and everybody in it is naked, completely naked, except for like some people have bird heads, and some people are getting like pitchforked by like a scorpion man with his butt out. So I didn't bring a second look. I was like, the body is the look. So I take off the fringe and the pasties, and I remove the fruit from my hair, but I feel underdressed. So I ask my friend if I can borrow a few lengths of her black nylon rope, and I tie a body harness around myself, and I'm like, that's tasteful, it's black, it's New York. And the production assistant is like, "Okay, cool, so here is your prop for the second half of the evening." So we've switched from like, indulgent, fun, sin stuff into like heavy, sort of like intense, these are the consequences of living so poorly, or whatever the fuck. So my prop is a shuddering, glistening, enormous Boston cream cake. And my job for this half of the party is to walk around and see if I can feed people bites of the cake. So I take one step out from the backstage, and I instantly recognize the situation from many of my adolescent nightmares. I am the only naked person at the party. Everyone's still wearing their fancy suits, but now I'm seeing them at like cockroach eye level, you know? There's no bird's eye view. I'm not on top of the bar. I'm not a radiant goddess with my grapes. I am myself. I am 5'1", and there's something sticky on the floor, and I don't want to know what it is. So I'm walking around and asking, "Oh, would you like a bite of..." "Oh, no, would you like a bite of cake?" "Oh, okay, I'm sorry." And around me, there are other performers. So there's one guy who is dragging lighter fluid-soaked wands across people's skin and igniting them, so there's little bursts of flame everywhere. There is a woman in a chair with a knife slicing her mouth open, and fake blood is just dripping down her face and her body. My friend has a giant python, Fantasia, and is walking around with her and just kind of showing her off. And then there's a performer who is dressed in a papier-mâché pig mask, who's on a high platform admiring herself in a mirror. And then there's a dominatrix in a cage in the basement, screaming and dragging people in and beating them. And then there's me. "Do you want some cake?" "No." "Do you want cake?" "No." "Okay." And in the dungeon area of the sin-themed party, a man in a Paul Smith suit tells me that he is on a cleanse. motherfucker. I turn and I look at a couple and offer them the cake, and they're like, oh, sorry, we're really trying not to do the gluten thing. And I turn and I find some guy who's like, trying to suck on a performer's tit, and I'm like, and he's like, I already drank my calories in champagne tonight. And I look around and I notice that people are not making eye contact with me. And I feel strangely and inexplicably invisible. And this thing happens where I kind of just exit my body for a second. I feel my face get hot, and then I don't feel anything. And I'm above myself, watching myself fail at this. And I feel so alone. But I still have the rest of my shift, so I decide to just pivot. I'm like, I can't do this anymore because this feels fucking terrible. So I leave the dungeon, I go back to the main floor, and I find a black leather chaise. And I lie down on it, and I set the cake next to it, and I look at the cake, and I just decide to put my finger right on its meniscus. And then I penetrate it. And I pull the cake out, just frosting and crumbs, and it makes a slow arc in its trajectory into my mouth. And I decide in that moment that gluttony has decided that this is the best fucking thing she's ever had in her life. So I amp up the pleasure that is going through my body as I eat, and I am refusing to break eye contact with the people who have noticed what I'm doing. And I am watching them watch me, and I take another bite of that fucking cake. And the cake is so yummy. And by then, people have started to gather around me, and they are watching me. And I can't tell if they're looking at me or the cake or my body, or if it seems like some of them are like, whenever I swallow, they seem like they're swallowing. And I'm like, are they trying to eat through me? Do you want to fuck me, be me, eat me? What's happening? And a man in a black angel wings with a mask on goes from standing to then on his knees and starts crawling towards me. And he asks, can I feed you? And I say, you may. And he grabs a handful of the cake and extends his hand towards me. And I grab him by the wrist, and I suck the cake off of his palm and lick his fingers and stare him in the eyes and say, thank you. And it's kind of The Walking Dead now. People are really honing in on me a little bit. And I see a woman who is maybe the next fattest person to me in the room, because she's like a size 8, gasp. And she looks like she's near tears. And I'm wondering if she is also feeling invisible in the room that night. And the man in the angel wings leaves, and another man has taken his place. And he is wiping cake across my collarbone and licking and sucking it off. And, I'm writhing in pleasure, and I'm like, yes, oh, eat this. But in my head, I'm like, he's eating so much of my body glitter. I hope that shit is non-toxic. I'm starting to get kind of yucked out from how much sugar, like cake really isn't I'm not really a cake person, it's not really my thing, and I'm also like, my immune system is like pretty good, but I've been licking a lot of strangers tonight, I don't know, like I start getting a little overwhelmed, and I kind of go back into me mode, and me is completely just sort of above her pay grade in this moment, so I lie, and I say that my shift is ending and that I need to go. And so I stand up and I pick up the rest of the cake and I beeline for the backstage. And as I'm leaving, I hear voices behind me, and it's men saying, wait, stop, I didn't get to feed you yet. Come back, you need to have more. Go to the backstage, shut the door, spit out the cake, drink some water, wash my face. And in that moment, I felt so full. And I don't just mean of cake. Because as I got dressed to leave, I realized that I got paid to be at a place that they had to pay to go to. And that they had to continue to be whoever it was that they were. And that whatever they were hungry for, whatever they were not able to give themselves voice to, whatever kind of appetites that they had been rejecting, I was able to just breeze through it, collect my check, and go. So sometimes it is very generous to be a monster. And sometimes it is a very generous thing to feed one. Thank you.